Hello and welcome to a new tutorial. This is Everything April YouTube channel. Today's video is on how to make a multiple keyhole neckline on a bustier top or blouse. Please watch to the end of this video. Thank you to all my subscribers and all my viewers, and if this is your first time checking out my channel, you're very welcome. Please click on the subscribe button to subscribe and also on the notification bell beside it to be notified every time I upload a new video, and please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So I've already drafted out my pattern, and for this multiple keyhole neckline it is best to work with a princess dart. When you're making your bustier, to work with a princess dart because of the keyholes. It's not just one keyhole but multiple keyholes on the neckline. So I'll be explaining my pattern, and already I have on this channel how you can make a princess dart bustier with bust dart, so I'll be dropping the link in the description box. So for this I have a length, the front bodies, the length is 17 inches plus half inch joining allowance because I've added all my allowances on the pattern. For the shoulder slope, I used the 3 inch 8 inches method. At the 8 inches point I came down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope in front. From the shoulder slope I measured what I have to the chest line and then found the midpoint of that and came in by half inch for the front armhole curve. And also you can see just the normal princess dart. So for the waist dart I took 2 inches, and on the under bust line I took 2.5 inches. So for the bust dart I took 2 inches, which is the difference in height between the front bodies and the back bodies. So that is it for the dart. And the bust span I'm working with is 8 inches divided into 2 is 4 inches plus half inch joining allowance. So I have 4.5 inches for my nipple to nipple measurements. So for the back, like I said, it is 2 inches shorter than the front. So I just drafted the back with a waist dart. You can see the length 15 inches plus half inch joining allowance. And for the shoulder slope at the back I came down by half inch. For the front, the shoulder slope I came down by 1 inch. At the zipper allowance side I came in by half inch at the waist line to eliminate zip bulge, and I also replaced that measurement after taking all the measurements on the waist to avoid shortage. So I'll go ahead and cut out my pattern. So I've cut out the back. I forgot to mention I use a neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 3 inches for the front neckline. And for the back I used 3 inches by 1.5 inches. So to cut out the front pattern, I would first blend sharp edges around the dart areas. I would blend them, not in order to make everything curved and not sharp. So for me to cut out, I will need to I'm going to cut out the dart from the waist, and I'm also going to cut out close the bust dart. So this bust dart, closing it will make the side of the front bodies and the side of the back bodies to meet at the same point, so that the front will not be longer than the back length. So to do that, I'm going to fold in. First of all, I'm folding in, closing that dart, and once I close it, you see that the seam lines at the side have shifted. So I'm going to blend that to avoid shortage. So I'm going to blend my seam allowance line down up to the chest line, the measurement I have on the chest line, so as when I cut this open I will not have shortage. So, because if I cut it directly like this I'm going to have shortage. So I'm going to blend back. I'm cutting through this line and I'm cutting close to the bust point, but I'm not cutting it out completely. So when I close this, when I close it, you will see how it has shifted. So I'm going to blend this back to the chest line so that I will not have shortage. So I've blended this out. Then I can go ahead now and cut out this dart, or use a masking tape to tape this in place. I'm going to use a masking tape to hold it in place. So that's what I'll do. I'll use my masking tape to hold this and make it one piece. I don't want it to be in pieces, so I'm going to hold this in place and then go ahead and cut out the remaining part of the pattern. So like I said before, I used a neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 3 inches. But for a bigger person, you can decide to make the neck depth to be 3.5 inches, so as not to have it choking on the neck of the person wearing it. So after cutting my pattern, I'll use the pattern to cut out the fabric I'm working with, and also lining pieces for them. So this is the pattern. I've cut it out. So when I bring in the back pattern, you see that because I've closed the bust, that the side seams match each other. When I close it up, they'll match each other without one being longer than the other. So I'll go ahead and use my pattern to cut out the main fabric. So I've cut out the fabrics for this. I cut 2 pieces for the back and 2 pieces of lining as well. I did not iron interfacing, but you might, if you want, iron interfacing on them. Then for the front part, I've cut out 2 pieces for the side front and also for the lining, and I've ironed soft interfacing on both the lining and the main fabric. I've also ironed my wording on the main fabric. And for the center front, I cut on fold for both the lining piece and the main fabric, and I've ironed gum stay on the lining piece and a soft stay on the main fabric, and I've also ironed my wording on the center front. So to join this, I would start joining from the lower part. I'll use ½ inch seam allowance to join the center front and the side fronts together. I'll do the same for the lining, but before that, I'll work on the neckline. So to make the multiple keyhole neckline, I'm going to duplicate my pattern on a folded paper. So I folded a paper and I've duplicated my pattern, but not the full pattern of the center front, but up to the chest line. And I've also made a smaller pattern on fold as well. I made 2 patterns of the center front, but not the full pattern, just to the chest line for this bigger piece, and for the smaller piece from the neckline I have about 2 inches. So I'll keep this aside and work on the bigger piece that I just duplicated. So on this pattern, I'm going to mark out the shoulder joining allowance I added, because this is not part of the bodice but an allowance. So I'm going to mark out that ½ inch. I traced it out from the main pattern, so I'm just going to make it visible. I'm marking it out because it's not part of the pattern. So I'll fold back my um, pattern into 2 and then decide how big or how bold I want the keyhole to be. So you can use anything between 2 to 3 or 3.5 inches, depending on what neckline you've already used. So you put your neckline into consideration. So I've already used a neck depth of 3 inches, so I'm going to add extra 3 inches. My keyhole is going to be 3 inches. So I'm measuring from the folded paper, I'm measuring 3 inches all round to the shoulder. So I'll measure 3 inches all round as I'm demonstrating. So I did that with a pen first. I'm going to make it visible using a marker. You are also at liberty of choosing the shape or the pattern of the keyhole you want to make. So first of all, I'm going to fold a smaller paper. I'm going to measure. I have 3 inches. That's the length of the keyhole I want. So I'm going to fold a paper and make sure that the length I have is up to 3 inches, and the width I will have about 3 inches. I'll just cut that out for now, and then make the shape I want for the make a pattern for the shape I want for the keyhole. So you can decide what shape you want. If you want an oval shape, if you want a circle, or if you want a pear shape for your keyhole. So I've first of all cut out a smaller piece of paper, 3 inches by 3 inches or thereabout, to use it to make my pattern for the keyhole. So the paper is on fold, so I've cut out a smaller piece of paper. I'll make sure that the length is the same with what I have traced out on my pattern for the neckline. So I have 3 inches. So I've decided to go with a pear shape for the keyhole. So I have a length of 3 inches. So at the bottom part, I'm going to measure 0.75, that's 3/4 of an inch, because my paper is on fold. I want when I open it to have 1.5 inches. So if you want 2 inches, you would measure 1 inch. So I want when I open it to have 1.5 inches. So I'm making a curve. I'm using a curve ruler to curve this. So just as I'm demonstrating, I measured 0.75 inches at the bottom part, and just from the tip of the top part connected to that point. You can see how I placed the ruler and connected. So I'm going to just use my free hand to curve it towards the end. So I would use a marker to make this visible so that you see the shape I have. So I'm just using my free hand to connect the tip down. I'll go ahead and cut out this pattern. So I've cut out the keyhole pattern, and I would make sure that it's the same length, the 3 inches length I have on the pattern for the neckline. So I have the same thing. So this is on fold. So for the center front, I want the keyhole to start from the center front. So I would pin my pattern. The pattern is on fold, so I'll pin it on fold, because also the bigger pattern for the neckline is on fold. So I'll pin them together or hold them in place, and then trace out this this pattern I have, the shape I want for the neck, the keyhole. I'll now trace that out on the center front. At the center front, the paper is on fold, so I would place them, the folded part of the pattern on the folded part of the neckline, and I'm going to trace out what I have for the first keyhole I want. So I would trace that out. So now I have the first keyhole. So I want 5 keyholes on the neckline. I'm going to measure out from the tip of the first keyhole. I'm going to measure and determine how spaced I want, the space I want in between the keyholes. I want this to be spaced out evenly, so I would check that before I start tracing or placing the other keyholes. So I've made the center front keyhole, that is 1, and I need 5 keyholes. My paper is on fold, so I'll just make 2 on this side. So I'm checking how I will space this, so I will have even spacing on the neckline. From the first keyhole, I'm going to measure 1.75. I'm going to measure 1.75 and then place my pattern. I opened up this pattern to make the second keyhole, and it will also be open when I'll make um the third keyhole. So you can see how I'm tracing it out. The spacing in between them is 1.75, so that everything will be spaced out evenly. Now I've made 2.5 key holes on this side. I'm going to trace it out using a tracing wheel, so that the same shape I have on this side of the paper I will have on the other side when the paper is opened up. I will then use my pen to retrace all these patterns. So you can see I have the 5 keyholes I talked about earlier. But if you don't have a tracing wheel, you can just trace out, place your pattern, measure the 1.75 and trace out the other 2, just like we did for the first 3. I've brought my main fabric and the lining, so I've placed them right sides facing each other. I've placed them so that they match perfectly, and I'm placing the pattern I have, the keyhole patterns I have, on the main fabric. I'm going to pin the 3 together. This means I'm sewing the lining piece, the main fabric, and the pattern for the keyhole together. The right sides are facing each other, then with the pattern on top of the main fabric, I'm going to sew on the pear shaped I made the 5 of them. I'm just going to sew all round. I'll sew and show you what I have. So I've sewn them on these patterns. I've made the 5 of them. You can see it. If I turn to the back, you can see what I have, my stitches, you can see them. And I've also sewn the center front and the side front together for the main piece and the lining piece, and I've notched and ironed open. So I'll go ahead and tear out my paper so that you see we'll continue from there. I first sewed the neckline, the keyhole. I first made the stitches for the keyhole before I joined the center front to the side front. So I did it, the lining piece separate and the um, main fabric separate after sewing, because I used half inch, that's what I left for it. To join them together, I notched the seams and I ironed the seams open. So I've also gone ahead to sew the lining and the main fabric by the sides, because I'm using the lining to turn the main fabric, but I did not turn the neckline. You can see it's only the keyholes that I sewed. I will cut out the keyholes. I will cut very close to the seam line, as close as I can. So I'm cutting close, very close, just leaving about quarter of an inch or even less than that. I'll cut as close as I can. But if you, even if you can't cut as close as this, cut as much as you can and then notch the seam you have left, notch all round the keyholes. After cutting this out, I'm still going to notch all round so that this can turn and relax. When I turn it to the right side, it's going to be very, very relaxed. I'll go ahead and cut out the remaining parts. So I've cut everything out. I would notch properly. I'll notch all round the seam left and then turn to the right side. After turning to the right side, I'm going to iron what I have. I'll iron it so that everything will be well relaxed. I've ironed this out. I'll then bring the neckline I traced out before. I traced out from my pattern. I'm going to place this front piece on this neckline, on the neckline I traced out on a paper before. So this is to make sure that I will have the original neckline I started with. After cutting out the keyholes, the neckline spread more than what I had before. So I'm pinning this out, this down on this pattern to have the original neckline I started with. So I'll pin all round, and I'm going to cut a piece of a fabric on bias to use and turn out the neckline, because I've not turned the neckline. So I'll cut a long piece on bias and use to turn the neckline with the paper. So after doing that, I will then cut out the remaining paper. So I have a width of 1.5 inches for the bias. So I will use that to turn the neckline with the paper I've pinned on this, so everything stays in place. After that, I'm going to then join the front to the back. I've sewn in the dart and I've turned with the lining. So I'll just join by the shoulder and by the side and attach the sleeve of my choice to this top. I have turned the neckline. You can see how beautiful it looks. I turned with the paper. Like I said, the paper is to make sure that I pin to the original neckline. So I'll go ahead now and cut out this paper. I don't need it anymore. You can see how beautiful and neat this looks, even from the inside parts. This is the wrong side, but it's looking very neat and beautiful. So I'll turn it to the front side. This is the front side. So this is already looking beautiful without even completing the dress. I'm making this into a dress. So I'm making this into a gypsy dress. I'll also be dropping the video on how I made the skirt part on this channel. So I'm going to go ahead now and join the front to the back part. The way I would join the shoulder, I would join them together. I would turn um, the lining piece. I'm going to turn the lining piece, as you see me do, to the other side, and so that the seam I'll make will be inside and the shoulder will be neatly finished. Then I'll also sew using the allowance by the side, using the allowance I left for it. And like I said earlier, I made a gypsy skirt for this that will attach to this. I'm making a gown, and then I'll sew on the zipper. So this is it, guys, on how you can make a princess that bustier multiple keyhole top or blouse or gown or whatever you want to make it into. And this is the complete dress I made. I made a ruched sleeve for this dress, and I'll also be posting the video on how I made the sleeve on this channel. So thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed. See you in my next video. Bye.